Good evening, I'm Ken Lark. I'm running in Group 2, and I'm going to step on the floor because I like variety here. So, yeah, we're going to check it out here so everyone won't feel uncomfortable about it. I want to look up here. I can remember being in Boston at the Boston Garden before they tore it out, and I got to go to center court and actually stand on it. It was a really awesome feeling. And so, I'm feeling that moment right now. So, anyway, but I'll stay back here so the camera can see me. I've been a lawyer for 17 years, but if you can probably look at me, I still have a boyish look, but actually I'm a little bit older than I appear. And that was, I've been a lawyer 17 years, but before that, way back in the 70s, I started off as actually a ski patroller in Vermont. And from there, I became an EMT and paramedic and came to Florida after I received my degree as an RN and started working in emergency rooms. And so I kind of come from this world in a whole different approach, and one of the things I think that distinguishes me is that I have a skill set that starts with what I think is people skills and relatability to everyday hardship that people have had and suffered to better understand what's going on with them. And I don't know who here has healthcare backgrounds, but there probably is somebody in the room here or has taken CPR. And I've been an instructor in that, and my dad was an instructor in that. I learned a lot from my dad, but one of the things I learned most importantly, I think, is you always start at CPR with the ABCs, you know? And that actually applies very well to law. And in law, when I'm looking at every case that comes to me, I start with that ABC. We start off at the very basics. And it's that idea that brings fairness and impartiality, I believe, to what's going on. Because once you understand what's going on with the case, then you can apply the law to the situation, and hopefully you can treat the situation right, kind of like in healthcare, and come up with a good conclusion and resolve the matter. That's the transferable skills that I bring. I didn't talk much about my practice areas. It's been almost in all of them, a little bit in crime, but everything else in healthcare related. I have some YouTube videos. You can find me if you want to search me that way. I have the Facebook and the website as well. You can learn more about me. I've got some materials. I'm Ken Lark. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it. I think there's probably a couple things you can talk about in that question, and one of the ones that comes to my mind is that being effective means one thing, being efficient is another. You know, efficiency, we kind of measure it by how many cases you can crank through the system. And I'm more concerned about being effective. Now, electronic stuff maybe helps with efficiency, but to be effective, I think you have to stop and pay attention to every case. I mean, earlier someone talked about, you know, the importance of that being that person's day in court, that person's issue, and that's a lot more important than, in my mind, efficiency. You know, and so I think that always has to stay at the forefront. I don't think it's necessarily right to measure judges' performance by how many cases they dispose of. And so I think that's one of the things I would personally try to always keep in mind is, what is the greater goal? What is it we're trying to accomplish as judges? And the court is your last place often to get the justice or whatever you're looking for. And so that's certainly not the right place to be shortchanged over efficiency. And so I think that probably encompasses what I feel about that particular subject. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ken Lark again. That's an interesting question because I think, again, it comes from a couple of perspectives here. One is not necessarily what the judge does that moment in court, but it's also how they carry themselves day in, day out, inside and outside the courtroom, in the public sphere. And one of the people I put pretty high on my list is a lawyer, it's going to be a judge, been a judge since 2006. Her name is Pam Campbell. And one of the things that I like about Pam Campbell especially is that she is constantly thinking about what is everybody else's perspective about the court and the process and what they're getting from the judges there. And in that regard, she's an ambassador. And our role isn't just calling the balls and strikes in the courtroom, but it's that constant part about you are who the public, everybody, the citizens are looking to figure out from you and from the court system, do they get a fair shake? Do they get a good result? Do they get a thoughtful process? And so that is probably the thing that I think she brings most to my mind when I'm thinking about what it would be like to be on the bench. I participate in a couple of legal groups. One of them is Barney Masterson in the Court. I'm one of the past presidents of that, and you get to pick who you have as co-president, and that's a judge, and I picked Pam Campbell for that exact reason. And that's one of the ones, you know, and I'm probably getting to the point here where, you know, somebody else is going to say, hey, well, why not me? I've been in front of Judge Boyer, and in Judge Boyer, it was the first hearing I ever had, and I'll have to tell you that I lost. But in that case, I learned a lot, even at that point, about perspective, about the judge. And I was in that day, in my first hearing in my first year of law, thinking about the things I just expressed, and that is, what's the judge thinking? What's going on? Am I doing the right thing? Am I getting the fair shake? Those are things that are going through my mind, and so I think that is the thing that we're looking for judges. And Judge Campbell's one of those people. Thank you. There we go. Can you hear me? Good. I'm Ken Lark, and I'm running for Group 2, Circuit Judge, and I'm going to keep it brief too. One of the things I think, though, you still need to know is that I've got about 40 years of life experience that starts from my early medical background, my family business that I grew up in with a country store that we ran in Vermont, and lots of different things that identifies and has life experiences that come right into the courtroom. You know, there are those life's troubles and tribulations and things like that that I bring, that I have an understanding for those things. And I've also been very active in our community here as a lawyer, and so you'll see that if you look at my cards or go to my website and see things I've done for the community law program, where I've gone to a homeless court, where I've worked. I still actually have a license as a registered nurse, and I go on medical missions. And there's a lot of things I'm involved with still. And I think that's really what is important for you to look at, is how, and I think one of our other candidates mentioned it, how those folks have acted through their life, and see, does that set the trend for what they're going to do later on? Because I think the proof is what you've done in your past. And I've been a lawyer for 17 years. I've had trial experience, and I've had a lot of other experience as well in the courtroom beyond that. And we have a lot of different things, because only about maybe 3% or less of our cases go to trial. And so a lot of the things that happen in the court process isn't in the courtroom itself with a jury trial. It certainly is a part of it, it's an important part, but all of it's what makes the system work, and you really have somebody who's had that experience to be in every facet of it, and that's what I've done in my life. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for listening to us, and please go to my website. And lastly, I'd say, if you want to hear a little bit more about my philosophy and my thoughts, I also have YouTube videos that you can listen to. Thank you. Ken Lark.